don't qualify for the Board of Trustees, I had to have something.
Oh, I sincerely appreciate it, sir.
You're welcome.
We'll wait another couple of minutes.
Yeah, Trustee Lowell said he'd be in attendance. Oh, there's Trustee Rogan.
Okay, we'll wait for Trustee Lowell to get online. We do have a quorum, but I'd just like to extend the courtesy of Trustee Lowell being able to join us from the very beginning of the meeting.
Unless Clerk Vasquez heard otherwise.
Pardon me?
Unless Clerk Vasquez heard otherwise today.
No, I didn't hear from him. I had heard that he would be here.
That he would be attending?
Yes, ma'am.
There's Trustee Lowell now. Welcome, Trustee Lowell. I'll call the Thursday, January 13th, 2022 Board of Trustees special meeting to order. Could we have the roll call, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mayor Angelo,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Present.
Trustee Miller,
Present.
Trustee Rogan,
Present.
Trustee Lowell,
Present.
Trustee Waugh, and Trustee Carabas.
Present.
Please all rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
and to the
and to the
republic
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is our time for a reflective moment of silence. Let's keep the victims of COVID, their families, the victims of the fires in Boulder County, and the victims of the tornadoes in mind. I want to thank everybody for attending the special meeting. I promise you, I won't call 3 in our last week in office. but I really do appreciate the attendance tonight at this meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Are there any trustees that wish to amend the agenda at this time? Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
Yes, I'd like to amend the agenda by striking removing item number 4, Roman numeral 4, part 2 from the agenda, which relates to a possible ballot question on Board of Trustee term limits. I would move to remove that item from the agenda.
Do we have a
Second that.
We have a motion and a second for removal of item 4-2 from the agenda. Discussion?
My reason for doing that is that the voters have already addressed this question in 2018, and I don't think it needs to be addressed again. I also don't think it's appropriate for a special meeting. It's been rushed as to time with no public input and no prior board discussion about whether it should even be considered, much less at a special meeting. And doing it in that manner basically eliminates most public input. So I don't believe it belongs on, it's the kind of emergency item that belongs on a special agenda, and therefore I move to remove it from this agenda.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I have one.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm just curious why this all of a sudden appeared. We haven't had any discussion of it in any of our regular Board of Trustees meetings. I want to know, why is it being brought up now?
I can address that, Trustee Lowe. The capability to be able to place a ballot measure by resolution was just brought to the attention of the Board of Trustees. In the past, we have always done that procedure by ordinance, which takes 2 readings. There is not enough time to consider this ballot measure by ordinance, and so that's why it's on this agenda, to consider it at a future meeting by resolution if the board so desires. And the reason that I feel as strongly, because I brought this up, is that there is now the capability for the mayor to serve 4 terms and the Board of Trustees to serve 3 terms. The mayor is a member of the Board of Trustees. To be perfectly honest with you, when this item was brought before the public in 2018, I believe, as the Mayor Pro Tem stated, to be perfectly honest with you, it most likely should have been 1 ballot measure, not 2, since the mayor is a member of the Board of Trustees. But we have now a situation where a mayor could serve 4 terms and board members could serve 3. And personally, I don't care. It's a board decision whether we should revert back to how it used to be, that everybody could serve 3 consecutive terms, or we could have a ballot measure that gave trustees the capability to serve 4 terms as well. So my issue, Trustee Lowell, is that the mayor can serve 4 terms and trustees can only serve 3. And I don't think that's correct, to be perfectly honest with you. And like I stated previously, I think the original ballot measure should have been 1 question. Are there any other comments? Mayor Pro Tem.
To further answer Trustee Lowell's question, the question of whether a ballot measure could be done by resolution or ordinance was asked of the town attorney back in December. So weeks ago, before the last meeting of December, he answered that it could be done by either resolution or ordinance. But this matter was not brought up at the last meeting in December or the first meeting in January. It was put on here on very short notice. So it could have been brought up at least 2 meetings ago. So the fact that identification that you could proceed by resolution has been known for quite some time.
I don't consider knowing that the possibility existed in December is necessarily defined as quite some time, to be perfectly honest with you. That's just my personal opinion. Counselor?
I just wanted to also just unrelated to the timing issue, that the opinion that this could be done via resolution has at this point been confirmed by CML as well, both for Tabor questions, tax increase questions, as well as general advisory questions, which is what this would be.
Trustee Lowell, you had a further comment?
No, I understand what Mayor Pro Tem Browning is saying. I thought that was in regards to his proposed vote on the trail up to Hall Ranch. I thought that was the impetus for that. I see your point, Mayor Angelo, on changing the disparity between the terms. I'm just not sure that it's, as Mayor Pro Tem says, I don't think there's been enough public notice. I don't think it just popped up out of the blue is what I'm saying. I don't see any groundswell for doing it in the public. That's my only comments. I was just confused why it popped up in a special meeting.
It popped up at a special meeting in concern of timing. It's all a matter of timing. And it's a matter of knowing that a ballot measure could be placed by resolution instead of ordinance. It's very simple. It's not a difficult situation to understand. I just would like the equity of equal terms for the mayor and trustees. That's all. It's very simple. It's not complicated. Any other comments? If not,
Trustee Miller has her hand up, sir.
who does?
Trustee Miller.
I'm sorry, Trustee Miller. Go ahead.
I mean, I totally agree with you on that idea of term. I don't like that either. I never did even when we were putting that out to vote. I thought that was pretty silly. And so I would be in favor of moving forward with that if you wanted to. I think that's totally legitimate. So I support that.
Are there any other comments? Trustee Rogan?
Thank you, Mayor. I personally also agree with you that the disparity seems awkward. However, the voters have voted on this, and they voted on this in 2018. And so absent any reason other than we don't agree with it, I see no reason to put it on the ballot again, especially in a manner that doesn't consider any public input.
And just
we have the opportunity, if we put it on the agenda for the next meeting, to get public input on it. I believe. Counselor?
Yeah, and just to be clear, and this is not saying putting any direction on whether this should be passed or not, that this is a discussion. It's not set up as it would be require a resolution to put it on the ballot. And so this would have to come back at a future meeting, both this item and the other ballot question item on here. So without any comment on whether or not to do this, just the procedure would be a discussion here on whether or not the board would want to do it. And then if so, there'd have to be another meeting at some point in the future to approve a resolution to set the ballot title.
Further comments? If not, I imagine we proceed with a vote, Counselor, to place it on the next agenda.
Mayor Angela, this would be a vote on whether to amend the agenda to strike that item.
Oh, that's right. Excuse me, I forgot that. All right. We have a motion on the table and a second to strike this item and amend the agenda. Are there any further comments in that regard? If not, I'll call for the vote.
Mayor Angelo,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
No,
and Trustee Carvis,
Aye.
and Trustee Lowell. Did we lose him?
I do not see Trustee Lowell on the,
I don't see him on here.
I would let the record reflect that Trustee Carvis has joined and Trustee Lowell has left.
Yeah.
We can either wait for Trustee Lowell to come back, but the item will not, the item will be struck. If Trustee Lowell votes aye, the item is struck. If he votes no, then the vote is 3-3, Counselor.
And therefore it fails.
Okay, then we'll wait. Then we'll wait until he can rejoin us to be proper. Can you call him, Clerk Vasquez, please?
Yeah.
does it fail either way though? Yeah, it fails either way. So can we move on?
No, that's not true. If Trustee Lowell votes yes, then it is removed from the agenda for consideration. So his vote is imperative.
No, either way, there won't
Either
be
way, it
action on it
Yeah, it either fails 3-3 in a tie vote, or it fails
for
for
lack of majority.
you need a majority to.
But it does change the way it's
Well,
reflected.
You're right.
in this.
You're right. It would. The agenda would stay the same for lack of a majority. The question is whether to amend the agenda. So
That's right.
that's right. So you're correct, Mayor.
So we'll just have to be a little more patient.
No patience here.
Did you get any response?
No, I got his voicemail, sir.
Okay.
Attorney Dittman's, I know procedurally, it should either be, we reflect he was not present for the vote, or a reasonable time to wait, or can we move on to the first item?
Well, we still haven't approved the agenda yet.
That's right.
No. But the
I
next,
I would ask at this point that it reflected that he not be present.
he's not answering his text either.
Although he was present for the discussion.
We'll wait just a little while longer. It's a consideration I'd give any other trustee or member of the Board of Trustees. So I'll extend that to Trustee Lowell as well.
Oh, it looks like
There he is right there. Could you explain to him the situation, Counselor? Once he gets back online, go ahead, Counselor.
so Trustee Lowell, right now we're in the process of the vote on whether or not to amend the agenda. And so a vote yes would be to amend the agenda, a vote no would be to not amend the agenda. So that's where we're at this point.
And your vote, sir?
No,
You do not want to amend the agenda.
I do not.
Okay,
The
So-
agenda is not amended.
all right. So are there any further requests to amend the agenda? Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Oh, no, it wasn't amended, excuse me. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So
Think-
moved.
Been made.
Do we have a second?
It's already been seconded.
Okay. Have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. I'll call for any discussion. I'll call for the vote, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Carabas,
Aye.
Trustee Miller.
Yay.
The agenda is approved. Madam Clerk, could you please read the next item into the record?
Yes, the next item is discussion and direction on the process for Planet Bluegrass conditional use review, submittal packet, and other related agreements.
Counselor? Staff, whoever wants to take this.
Philip, do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
You to follow up?
I can go and
Okay.
you can jump in. Good afternoon, Mayor and Trustees. Thanks for holding a special meeting at short notice,
Trustee
but
Miller has her hand raised.
Trustee Miller?
Just for purposes of disclosure, I'd like to say that I work for Planet Bluegrass. I can be impartial and, not unbiased. So just allowing that.
Thank you. Continue, Philip.
okay. Thanks for holding special meeting
Trustee
on
Brown
short
has his
notice.
hand
Point of order.
Go ahead.
If a trustee has admitted bias, as Trustee Miller has properly done, then under the ethics code, the trustee must recuse themselves not only from the vote, but also from the discussion of the item.
I believe she stated that she could relate to this issue without being biased. Is that true, Trustee Miller?
That is correct.
That's what I thought.
Then I would move for the to require the recusal of Trustee Miller. This has been voted on before in connection with Planet Bluegrass matters, and a majority vote was held before that someone who works for Planet Bluegrass should not be participating in the either discussion or the voting of Planet Bluegrass matters. It's a matter of simple, clear ethics. And so I move that Trustee Miller not participate in this, anything related to Planet Bluegrass. That's what we voted before.
Do we have a second?
Recuse herself, she should be recused.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second as stated by the Mayor Pro Tem. Are there any comments by the Board of Trustees? I'll make one. And I've thought about it long and hard. I made a mistake in the past. Trustee Miller, and I want to apologize to you. When a trustee is asked whether they can be impartial, and they state that they can, that should suffice and satisfy the remaining members of the Board of Trustees. And so, yes, in the past, I have voted that you must recuse yourself because you worked for Planet Bluegrass last summer or something. But in this particular case, after you've stated that you can be impartial in regard to these issues, I will vote against this motion. Are there any further comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, that is not the standard of what a trustee states their belief to be or not. The standard under the ethics code is whether there could be a perception of bias. And just because a trustee says, even though I work for this company, and even though we're about to discuss and vote on something having to do with this company, I think I can be unbiased. That's not decisive. It's very clear if this board is serious about ethics, that someone who works for a company who is, and it doesn't matter if they're an executive or not, whether they work for the company or not, they should not be participating in discussion and voting about that company. Trustee Miller hasn't just worked for this company last summer. She's worked for this company for years. Trustee Miller in the past recused herself from voting on matters relating to another company in town that she also did work for in a similar capacity. And that would be Riverbend. And she repeatedly recused herself. So she's been inconsistent about this. Now the mayor's going to be inconsistent. The consistency should be that if someone works for a company, code of ethics requires recusal. And if the board cares about ethics, it should enforce the code of ethics. If it doesn't, we can just let somebody vote anytime and discuss anytime they want to, whether it concerns their employer or not. That's a very low standard of ethics, and it's not good for the perception of this board if that occurs. So we should do what's right under the ethics code.
I've read the ethics code many times, and if we strictly interpret the ethics code, that's where we'd be. Every meeting is in an ethics meeting. So I understand that, and I'll stand by my apology to Trustee Miller. If she says that she can vote on this impartially, I'll take her at her word. It's as simple as that for me. Counselor?
I just have a question. I mean, it's the board's decision as the Board of Ethics to decide how to deal with this. But the question is, does Trustee Miller, do you currently work for Planet Bluegrass?
I am not currently working for Planet Bluegrass.
Do you plan to work for Planet Bluegrass in the future?
Potentially during festivals, the 4 days of festivals. But I certainly have no financial, I don't have any money invested in the company. And let me point out that the mayor of this town, the past term, had very significant financial stakes in many different areas of this town. And there's many people in this town that have different pieces and parts that they have stakes in. If the Board of Trustees always made people recuse themselves from anything that they knew or had any involvement in whatsoever, nobody'd ever be able to vote. It's a small town. I am telling you, I do not have anything to gain by voting one way or the other here. I have spent more time on this board than I ever have working for Planet Bluegrass. I have spent more volunteer hours volunteering for this town than I have working for Craig Ferguson. or Planet Bluegrass. So that's all I have to say. I can't, I don't even know how else to say it. I'm not biased on Planet Bluegrass toward Planet Bluegrass.
Any further comments? If not, I'll call for the vote.
Mayor Angelo,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
No.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Carabas,
Aye.
does Trustee Miller get to vote, Attorney?
Yes.
She
Yes.
can if she so wishes.
Okay, Trustee Miller,
Yay.
Do you understand your vote, Trustee Miller? A vote yay means that you would have to
No,
recuse yourself.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah, no, I'm
so
sorry.
your vote is no. So again, we have a 3-3 vote and the motion fails. You'll get to participate, Trustee Miller. Philip, you can continue.
Okay, thank you. We feel this discussion today will just really help the town and the applicant move forward in response to Planet Bluegrass's request to expand and change the uses of their facility.
I'm really
At
sorry,
both-
Philip, but can I interrupt real quickly to
Sure.
just give a disclaimer on this particular item? So this is not an action item. This is a discussion on the process. There's to be no action taken with regard to the Planet Bluegrass application. We're not going to discuss the details of the Planet Bluegrass application as it is a pending quasi-judicial matter before the town board. Just given the complexity of, as you'll see through Philip's my discussion of the 5 different documents that 3 different kinds of documents that are required to be amended in a variety of ways. We thought it was a good idea to preview this issue with the board so there wasn't questions or major hangups as we start working our way through what would be multiple public meetings to amend, at least consider amendments to each of these agreements. So no action here, no discussion as to contents, but with that, I'll just let Philip continue.
Sure. And so as Brandon mentioned, there's multiple processes, various agreements between the Planet Bluegrass and the town. And we wanted to just provide you a preview of the approval processes, answer any initial questions the board may have. And obviously this is quasi-judicial, so we won't be covering any of the content in the meeting. Today, we're recommending moving forward though with these procedures that we're going to walk through, holding public hearings and amending various agreements. First, I'll give an overview of the agreements between Planet Bluegrass and the town. There are 5 documents that control the use of Planet Bluegrass properties, which include the ranch, which is the property on the east side of 36, and the farm property, which is on the west side. And while these documents have been amended several times, all of them fall into 3 categories. First, there's the annexation agreement. Second, the amendable letter of understanding, or ALU. And third, the site plan and keynotes. And the changes currently proposed by Planet Bluegrass require amendments to all of these source documents. So beginning with the annexation agreement, in 2017, the board approved the annexation of the Planet Bluegrass farm. And while the annexation agreement didn't specify how to amend the agreement, the original approval was made by ordinance, and Colorado law generally holds that amendments to the ordinance can only be made via ordinance. So to amend the annexation agreement, an ordinance and 2 readings are required. And note that the ranch property does not have an annexation agreement. Next, for the amendable letter of understanding, or the ALU, this is a requirement of the CE1 zoning district, which both the ranch and the farm properties are zoned. The ALU is intended to provide an understanding between the applicant and the town, specifying the details of the entertainment to be provided. Both the ranch and the farm have ALUs. The amendment process for ALUs is provided in the keynotes to the site plan, which state that the ALU may be approved by the board just as contracts are approved, so by resolution. And last, there are the site plan and keynotes. These are amended through the conditional use process, which is detailed in the keynote section on the amendments for the keynotes and site plan. The conditional use review application has been submitted by Planet Bluegrass to amend the site plan and keynotes. And the review process has begun, and the PCDC public hearing is scheduled for January 24th. So in summary, there's really, three controlling categories of documents: the annexation agreement, ALUs, and site plan and keynotes. The annexation agreement is amended through the ordinance process, the ALUs through a resolution process. And last, the site plan and keynotes are amended through the conditional use process. So happy to take any questions or feedback, and Brandon, if you want to add, feel free. Thank you.
I did have one correction to the memo I wanted to make. I looked extensively through all the source documents to try and map out the process for this, given the complexity. And the keynotes for the ranch property are silent on how they are to be amended. And so, however, for the most part, the ranch and the farm property, the keynotes are identical. And so it would seem to me to make sense that they should be run through the same process, which is the conditional use process, which it says explicitly in the farm property keynotes that modifications to the site plan, or as it's called, the conceptual plan, and that particular document must be sent through the conditional use process. And as the keynotes are basically part of the site plan, they are the keynotes to the site plan. That would include the keynotes as well as one approval. And so that is what I believe to be the most efficient and correct methodology for accomplishing the review of the requested changes. But the reason why we're having this meeting is to kind of preview it, answer any questions or concerns there might be before we start spinning up the variety of public meetings that are required to get through this.
Are there any questions for Councilor Phillip at this time? Trustee Rogan?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I have a timing question. So can the conditional use review take place at the same time that we're doing the ordinance to amend in two readings? Can those two things happen concurrently?
So that's a fantastic question, something that we've already talked through to some degree, because the ordinance, as you recognize, does require two readings. And so what the conceptual plan is, if you will, pardon my pun for this, would be to have all the documents in the second reading on the same night, second reading of the ordinance. And so that would require a special meeting simply to move the annexation agreement onto a public hearing and second reading sometime probably the last week in January. And then the goal would be to have all these documents, all five of them, up for consideration at a public meeting on the 7th. That's the current goal. We recognize that's going to be difficult. That's why we're bringing this forward to kind of preview the process. But that seems to be the best way to move this forward, is to have a short special meeting, hopefully a short special meeting, just simply to set the public hearing on the second reading of the amendment of the annexation agreement.
I have another question, Mayor, if you don't mind.
No, not at all.
So as I think you all know, I and Mayor Pro Tem served on the subcommittee for Planet Bluegrass. And I know how complex these documents can be. So this seems like it's moving really quickly, and I'm wondering if anybody can speak to why we're not taking more time with this, because it is so complex. And I want to make sure that staff and that we have enough time to consider everything that we need to consider.
I'll let either Philip or Victoria handle that one.
Yeah, I guess this is at Planet Bluegrass request to, move this forward. I think the ordinance that we were moving forward with the conditional review, setting up the public hearings, doing all the noticing. I think we missed the ordinance requirement for the annexation, which doesn't align with our original timing. So I guess not a little oversight on staff and not understanding the ordinance requirement for the annexation. So we're trying to keep that on the original public process, public hearing schedule we had set. So bringing that to you today.
Anything to add, Administrator Simonson?
The only other thing to add is probably that historically Planet Bluegrass has put their ticket sales out over the holidays, and they have held off on that, waiting for the timeline we had originally proposed. And as Mr. Strom said, there was one little glitch in there. So I do know that is part of the consideration in regard to trying to get this done sooner than later. However, we made it very clear that we weren't going to rush it to the point that we were neglecting public input or enough time to review it. So I think everyone knows that if these get brought forward and there are issues that are going to take time to work through, then we're going to have to work through those. But they were already on the Planning Commission's radar and our radar for this time period. We just hadn't seen the red lines till right before we left for the holidays to be able to see how substantial of changes they were requesting.
Mayor Pro Tem, you had a question?
My question just got answered. I didn't understand why this was being done on a special meeting when it could have been done at any time in recent meetings, or could be done at the next meeting. And I just got that question answered. The answer is because Planet Bluegrass asked for it rather than a trustee or anybody. So now I understand. Thank you.
It's not accurate.
Administrator Simonson, go ahead.
That's not accurate. This meeting was not requested by them. This meeting was requested by the attorney and the staff because of the complexity of 12 documents, so that we weren't taking an hour during general business at 10 o'clock at night to try to come to agreement on this. So this meeting was not asked for by them. They actually were rather hesitant to have it. Attorney Dittman felt it was very important to have this ahead of time.
And Mayor Pro Tem, to follow up on that, the reason why I wasn't on the last meeting, which I would have preferred to have done, was because we didn't get everything, as I mentioned, until after, really after the holidays. It was sent right before the holidays, so no one had a chance to review it before that first January meeting. And it seemed like this discussion may take too long for the meetings coming up on Monday. And given the need to put this on the PCDC calendar, it seemed like it made the most sense to have a special meeting just to work through the process issues before we start spinning all those up.
Okay, my experience on this board has been that special meetings are called when you need to make a quick decision on something that can't wait. Here, we were told we don't even need to make a decision, and the processes are what they are. We can't change the processes once an application or request has been filed. The existing processes, when those things are filed, govern, even if we think a process needs to be changed in the future. So I just didn't understand. I guess the purpose of special meetings has changed now. I guess we call it whenever somebody wants to, whether we need to do anything or not. And I don't see anything to be done. We've discussed Planet Bluegrass issues multiple times at trustee meetings. We all understood that, for example, the change in the agreement that we made last year could be done by resolution. The issue came up during the course of that, of any change of the farm would probably require a conditional use review. The prior board, including 2 members of that board who did it this way, are still on the board, required that the annexation agreement can only be changed by ordinance. None of that is new. It is complicated and could be explained whenever something reaches us. I guess why we do special meetings has changed now, and they just can be called pretty much when anybody wants to for anything. So I get that now. Thank you.
Counselor, you had something to say?
Only that my original intent was to have a workshop on this, but kind of given, as I think this really is workshop material more than anything else, there's no decision to be made. Just the nature of the board's calendar. I don't know how this portion got morphed into a discussion item, but I think this is really a workshop kind of piece.
I would agree with that.
Further comments or questions?
I do, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, Trustee Caravas, I couldn't see you. Go
That's
ahead,
right.
sir.
I've got some low signal here.
Go ahead, sir.
It was mentioned that something needs to get on the calendar for a meeting on the 7th. 7th of what?
So I'll answer that question, Trustee Curvis. The tentative calendar that the staff is trying to work with would be to have the board's regular board meeting on the 7th be the meeting at which the second reading of the annexation agreement and the only readings for the conditional use, the conditional use approvals and the 2 resolutions be considered.
And those changes that will be considered doesn't have anything to do with the application, what they're asking to do on the properties, but just for us to change our procedures for them.
No, this would be to the approvals we're reviewing and are either approving or denying the requested changes.
So what month are you talking about?
February.
Do we have time for a full UEB review? Has our UEB reviewed what they're asking for? Go ahead, Philip.
Yeah, the referral with their application package has been sent to the UEB.
Okay, hadn't discussed it in the last meeting.
Okay, they yeah, and they have provided comments.
Okay.
Just so, yeah.
Oh, this is the original one they got over a month ago. So all the committees, all the commissions have returned their information to the PCDC at this point, as far as you know.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess a clarification to make there is that an initial proposal, I think, was sent out for referral in November. However, that was substantially incomplete. And in the regard that they did not actually submit what amendments they wanted to the source documentation, just kind of a narrative description of what they wanted to do. And so we felt as staff that was incomplete and rejected that submission. And then they resubmitted the actual red lines of the source documents, the amendments, if you will, like the day or two before Christmas. And
these are quasi judicial changes, correct?
Some of them are, yes. The conditional use process is a quasi judicial process.
So we're here to make a decision now to help set a guideline based on stuff we can't discuss.
We're simply talking about this is the process that we believe is applicable. Does the board have questions or concerns with that process, given the board's review of the source documentation? As we mentioned, is complex. At least one of them is silent as to the process. So it takes a judgment call, but I think we have the right one. We just didn't want it to be a surprise when a first reading for annexation agreement shows up as a special meeting the last week of January. And everyone asks, why is that? When we all know there are substantially more items that are required to accomplish the requested change.
Okay. So, all right. I think I understand, but it's still, all right. No, I got it.
Yeah. And if
still kind of wonky.
It's certainly wonky. I would agree with that assessment, which is kind of why this pre-meeting or pre-workshop really what I thought was necessary in some form to address the process. And if the board doesn't like the proposed calendar, the board can always continue that meeting on the 7th and say we need more time.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
But so we'll decide in the next meeting or two, end of January, of whether we're going to push forth any of these changes. So that's what I understand. Are we going to pass the changes in these documents at the same time we're approving their application and all their information?
So
their changes?
Correct. So on the 7th, the way it's set up currently, the board will be considering whether or not to approve their application for the changes. And those changes are scattered about the 5 different documents, and which have 3 different approval processes. Just kind of given the way this was all set up. And so on the 7th, unless the board continues that, those items, that would be the date in which the board would give a thumbs up or a thumbs down on each of the requested changes.
Changes in what they want to do on their properties. But then when do we address the actual documents of how we're going to amend them at the same time? Because what I'm getting at, I guess, is the application's already been filed. We, a governing body, after the fact, are going to start making changes in contracts or ordinances that usually go into effect. So we have to put special considerations in those ordinances. They go in effect retroactive to before the application date. Or is that not a concern here?
No, there's no retroactive. It will be going forward with these changes be applicable. And, then just the nature of the application is such that it spans both really the zoning, which is the site,
Okay.
and also the contractual pieces, which are the annexation agreement and the ALUs, really.
Okay. I think I got it clear now, I think. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Any further questions? All right. Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Counselor. No further questions? Madam Clerk, could you please read the next item into the record?
Yes, the next item is discussion and direction on a potential ballot question on Board of Trustees term limits.
This was very fascinating. I can recollect, and one of the reasons that I'm so thankful that we discuss ordinances on first reading is I recollect very vividly that a previous board had passed a measure for consideration of term limits on first reading without any discussion. And at second reading, they spent, I attended that meeting, they spent probably, honestly, I'll just generalize, over an hour discussing what would work, what could work, mathematically, what would be the best formula, and couldn't come up with a conclusion. So it died after going all the way through the process to a second reading. A loss of funds and time. So then in the future, there was a ballot measure that separated the term potentials of the mayor and the Board of Trustees. The only thing I would like to see done is to keep those equal. I don't care whether it's 4 terms for the mayor and 4 terms for trustees, to revert back to the way it used to be, which worked for 40 years of 3 2-year terms for the mayor, 3 2-year terms for trustees. That my only concern is to keep that equal. A lot of discussion took place at that meeting also about 4-year terms. And the problem that I recollect on 4-year terms when I first came to Lyons was that that's a long time to serve for some people. And when a trustee resigns, the Board of Trustees has the capability to appoint. And most of the time, if one trustee resigns, that would be an appointment. If you had in different time periods of that 4-year term, 2 trustees resign, you would have a board of 7 members with 2 appointed trustees. I personally don't think that's the healthiest procedure in a democracy. That's just my personal opinion. So I would just like it equalized. I think that if a mayor had the capability to serve 4 terms and a trustee also had the capability to serve 4 terms, they could develop a very meaningful relationship over those 8 years instead of a trustee all of a sudden having to not serve the last 2 years with a mayor that they had developed a very meaningful relationship with. So my intent on bringing this forward is to equalize it. It may not make sense to many of you, but it certainly worked for as long as I've been in Lions. It was fine. My personal opinion is it should have just been left alone. But I'm anxious to hear how the rest of the board feels about it. Are there any further comments? Trustee Rogan?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll kick us off. I see your points, and I also see arguments for having somewhat staggered term limits. And I'm not going to get into that because arguing that right now isn't the point. The point to me is that the voters have decided this issue, and the margins were narrow, and that's fine. But the voters have decided this, and so I don't believe we need to put it on the ballot again, unless there's some sort of groundswell of folks who are asking for it, or there's a petition to put it on the ballot. I see no reason to do it. They've already decided.
Any other comments?
I do, Mr. Mayor.
Trustee Caravas?
Along with what Trustee Rogan said, we did discuss in great detail staggering limits also at the time we were batting this around. I think Trustee Miller, I think that was during our first term, might have been our first year on there. And part of the reason was there was no one signing up for packets. And that's why there was a slight increase in monetary compensation discussed also. Then plus with the flood recovery and keeping people that are used to working along these issues, which the mayor had described, keep getting a good working relationship. So we batted around all kinds of 2-3 year terms, stagger them. Then who do we kick off to stagger? At the time when we were doing this, I think we were all coming and going at the same time. That has since changed. I guess, depending on who runs or not runs, but Wendy and I are leaving for sure because we're termed out and everyone else can stay or can run. So it's kind of taking care of itself in a way. But I definitely agree that we put it up to the vote of the people just a few years ago. They voted. Why the numbers came out the way they did of just 3 or 4 differences from the yay and nays compared to the mayor's term and the trustees' terms, don't know, but it did. I don't think we were using Dominion machines. So I think no one can claim any of that kind of stuff. We were just fine with what the people wanted to do. So I think we just leave it the way it is for now. If, as Trustee Rogan stated, if someone wants to put forth a petition and get the signatures and do something different, great. But the board of trustees, put it to the people. They told us what they wanted and we are following it. And I don't see a point at this time of engaging any further with it.
Further comments, Mayor Pro Tem?
I agree with Trustee Rogan and Trustee Caravas. This is a solution in search of a problem. The voters voted in 2018. If we're going to go back to the voters and ask them whether they want to change their minds about this, the vote they did in 2018, maybe we should go back and ask them if they want to change their mind about the trash ordinance that they voted on. Maybe we ought to ask them if they want to change their mind about the SOPOS ordinance governing use of parkland. I didn't agree with the outcome of the SOPOS ordinance, but I respect the will of the voters, and I think it's too soon, even though that was before the 2018, to go back and change it. it's not accurate that a mayor is just another trustee. A mayor has a lot more authority, even though Lyons mayors are by statute in general a weaker mayoral position than some other municipalities. The mayor makes appointments to boards and commissions. The mayor is a designated spokesman for the town. And very importantly, as we see tonight, the mayor has the authority to set an agenda and call special meetings that trustees, it's very difficult for the trustees to do that. So it's not the same. The mayor's role is not exactly the same as the trustees, although the mayor doesn't have a veto power here like it does in some other jurisdictions. I'm generally in favor of term limits, and I voted to keep them both at 6 years, but the voters voted differently, and I respect the will of the voters, and I'm willing to let it stay there. I could see a situation where it might make sense for a mayor to keep an extra 2 years, and that a great example would be, let's say you have a flood in year 6, and the mayor decides to transition to 2 more years to try to help the town recover from a flood, or these days probably more likely a fire. There are reasons for that. I don't, like I say, I favor a 6-year term, but if the voters saw fit to set an 8-year term for the mayor, so be it. I respect the will of the voters on this, just like I do the SOPOS ordinance. And the reason this is here before us is because Mayor Angelo disagrees with what the voters decided, and he disagrees with the actions of the prior board. And I don't think that's a good enough reason to put something on the ballot.
Any further comments? I can definitely speak for myself, and it isn't a matter of the mayor serving 4 terms in regard to a fire and emergencies and having to perhaps have the knowledge and the need for the stability of the town to serve an extra 2 years. It's to me, and it's a personal opinion in that regard, I'll admit that it is a matter of equality in regard to the members of the Board of Trustees. And yes, the mayor does have additional responsibilities and authority, but it is a weak mayoral board. I have told you all along that I consider you all equal, and I would prefer, it's just my personal opinion, that the members of the Board of Trustees have the equality to serve the equal amount of time. I don't know what's so difficult to understand about that. That's just, and I understand that that the people voted on it, but it wasn't presented to the Board of Trustees as a petition from the people to put this on the ballot. This was a discussion by the board and advice from council to separate the 2 ballot questions. And it's okay. I do respect the will of the people. I always have. But in this particular case, I personally think it was a mistake. That's all. It's very simple to me. But however the Board of Trustees feels about it is fine with me. I've stated my case. Are there any other comments? Well, how would we like to proceed? What direction would the Board of Trustees like to take on this? Do we not want to take this issue forward? Trustee Rogan?
I do not want to take this issue forward at this time.
Trustee Miller?
Yeah, sounds like it's not a good idea.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Browning?
I'm not in favor of moving forward on this. I think we should leave it as is.
Trustee Caravas?
Not in favor of moving forward at this time.
And where is,
Trustee Lowell is having internet connection issues. He's hopping off and on, so.
well, we have a majority of the board that has voted to not take this forward. And that is the end of that subject. Could you please read the next item into the record, Madam Clerk?
Yes, the next item is discussion and direction on a potential ballot question on the increase in lodging tax.
I know that we can't discuss in depth our future lodging capabilities, but I think that it's prime time to consider raising the lodging tax. I had a very interesting discussion at the LAHC meeting. You never know who serves on boards and commissions with you, but one of the members of that particular commission is a hotel manager. That's what she does for a living. And when she realized that what we charged was $2, she was aghast, to say the least. And she actually said that even $5 would be very, very reasonable. Further comments on this issue? Trustee Miller?
When this issue is first brought forward, when we very first started talking about this, I thought that $2 was way too low. And I also felt very strongly that camping should not be a part of it. I still feel that way. I still think that camping should not be included and that we should be charging $10, $7 to $10 a room. That's what most places charge. I don't know where the sweet spot lie. Maybe it's $5 if you guys are good with $5, but $2 is ridiculously low, in my opinion, especially for, lodging tax. I mean, if you go anywhere else, it's about $10 anywhere around here. And then there's tax, there's fees on top of that. Sometimes it's up to $25 for taxes and fees on a place to stay. And I have never seen anything but I've seen a few fees for like water and stuff like that on campgrounds, but I've never seen a lodging fee. So I think that the campground should be exempt from that. We could charge for utilities, but the campground, the camping fee is, I think we should exempt camping. That's my opinion.
Further comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, I'm in agreement that our lodging tax is too low, but I have a number of mostly timing, but also scope questions that relate to possibly raising it. If we put a measure on the ballot to raise the lodging tax, Tabor requires that a dollar amount of potential tax increase be on there. Right now, it would be, and when you set that, when a board of trustees sets that, it needs to be estimated high, because if it's estimated too low and you collect more in revenue than you had on the ballot, you've got to refund the difference to the voters, to somebody. And that's very, very difficult to do. You don't want to have to be in that position of cutting hundreds of.
You cut out. Mayor Pro Tem, you muted. Go ahead, sir.
Sorry, you don't want to be in a position of having to figure out how to refund over collected tax. It's a nightmare. And so we need to have a pretty good idea of what amount of revenue might be raised and therefore would need to go on the ballot. Right now, here in January of 2022, it's very hard to do that because we have a hotel application for a new hotel pending that the board, because of quasi judicial procedures, we don't even know the details of it. And even if we knew the details of it, we might approve. I'm just going to pick round numbers. If it's a request for 100 rooms, we might approve 100 rooms. We might approve 50. We might approve 80. We might approve 30. So we don't know that number yet, and that's a huge difference in our lodging tax, because right now, in terms of actual traditional hotel rooms in Lyons, I think we have 6 maybe. There's tiny homes. There's a few Airbnbs, but hotel rooms are up in the air, so it's going to be difficult to do that. We also have applications pending that I don't know the detail. We don't know the details about how camping might be affected. I don't know if part of Planet Bluegrass's application would change the number of campsites or not, but that again would affect the amount of lodging tax. And so it's very hard to estimate now what the potential revenue would be and frame the ballot question. It makes more sense to me that if we wish to increase the lodging tax, that would be considered after this board decides the pending Planet Bluegrass application and the pending hotel application, not before. Neither one of those things are going to change revenue for 2022. Those changes wouldn't go into effect until budget-wise until 2023. If a decision is made by this board or the next board to up the lodging tax, that could be put on the November on a November ballot. There will be a November election. There may not be a local measure on the election, but it can be added to a county ballot measure in November. And if approved by the voters in November, it could go into effect by 2023. The new hotel, if it's approved, isn't going to be built with, and rooms rented out until sometime in 2023 at the earliest. And Planet Bluegrass has already we've already set our budget this year, and Planet Bluegrass has already determined the charges they're going to make for their camping this year. It's already on their website. So they would have time after November of a November election to set their charges for the next year. So I think it makes more sense to put this on a November ballot than an April ballot. I also agree with Trustee Miller that camping should probably be taken out of the lodging tax. I don't think the per campsite charge necessarily correlates to a per room charge. There are differences between those. Each hotel room has water service, sewer service, electrical connections and appliances. Campsites aren't that way. There's no electrical connection to each campsite. There's water and sewer, but it's a communal, thing for the whole campground facility. So there are differences there, and it may not make sense to have the same charge for same tax on a campsite as it is on a hotel room. One option there is to set different tax rates for campsites and hotel rooms, which I believe can be done. The town attorney may wish to discuss that in more detail. But for example, I think it would be possible to set a per night tax of $3 per campsite, $5, $6, $7, whatever is determined for a hotel room. I think that's something that should be looked at as one option. But I also have a better idea that requires some time to study. This idea would require negotiations and a contractual agreement with Planet Bluegrass as to camping. And the reason it's just Planet Bluegrass is there are no other campgrounds in Lyons that charge tax. As we've discussed on a number of occasions, the camping in Laverne Johnson Park is done by the town. The town sets its own fees. It doesn't tax itself. It can adjust the revenues from those campsites as it sees fit without adjusting a tax. Lyons is almost built out. Nobody else is going to put in a new campground in Lyons. The cost of land here isn't going to lend itself to a campground. There are much higher uses that are going to be done of any vacant land in Lyons. So my suggestion as to what should be considered is that camping would be removed from the lodging tax, and an agreement discussed with Planet Bluegrass and negotiated where Planet Bluegrass would agree to pay a contractual town services impact fee that could be based on a percentage of sales, not of just campgrounds, but of all admissions to their festivals, which can bring in 4,000 to 5,000 people into town at once, and it does impact town services. That could be set initially, the amount they would pay at an increase above the current level. Basically, you could make it the equivalent of a $3 camping tax to produce the same amount of revenue if you wanted to. And it would have almost a built-in inflation index as Planet Bluegrass changes its ticket prices over time, which it has done historically. They've gone up. Artists cost more to bring in, inflation factor for supplies and utilities and that sort of thing. That sort of thing would have an automatic inflation index built into it, where if Planet Bluegrass over the years potentially raised its ticket prices, it would produce the same percentage of revenue for the town, and that would go up. Why would Planet Bluegrass do that? I think there's some very good reasons for Planet Bluegrass to do that. Right now, Planet Bluegrass is subject to the camping tax that it pays being increased anytime the board wants to propose it and the voters approved. If we took the existing lodging tax and we raised it to say $7, Planet Bluegrass would be paying $7 because under the existing ordinance, campsites are included in that. If we took it out of the camping tax and it's a contractual fee that Planet Bluegrass agrees to pay, not just Planet Bluegrass, but the town would be bound by that contract. The town can't breach contracts. The town can change an ordinance anytime it wants to on 60 days notice. It can't change a contract with a third party. It's got to abide by that contract. So to me, that's what makes sense. And I mentioned this in passing to the mayor and maybe a couple of other people in past, but I think that should be the subject of discussions between the town and Planet Bluegrass. I think it makes sense for the future for both the town and Planet Bluegrass, but that can't be done between now and next Tuesday when you'd have to vote on a resolution to put something on the April ballot, because ballots have to be printed in early February. So my position is that I think a lodging tax should be increased, but I think that a relook should be done at whether it applies to campsites. That requires sitting down and discussing things with Planet Bluegrass. So there's not enough time to do that between now and Tuesday. So my view is don't go forward on this now. See if we can improve what we've got now. And it can always be put on the ballot in November by the next board, and that's plenty of time to address the revenues for 2023 when it would become effective. So I don't think we should proceed now, but I think it merits further study in the future.
Further comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, sir.
I also was on the board with Trustee Miller, and I was in strong agreement. We were strongly aligned on we wanted a higher fee, I guess, as we call it, for overnight stays. And I don't recall exactly the reason it got whittled down, if there was testing going on around town through the EDC or something. And I can't also remember if we added when it got down to $2, it got so low that we added the camping sites to make up the revenue. I can't recall that exactly, but I do agree with Trustee Miller and Pro Tem Browning, and that removing that, I can't remember, Trustee Rowan, if you brought this up already or not, that removing the campsites for 10 camping on the Planet Bluegrass properties. Yeah, just quite doesn't make sense. We've had a lot of hassles with it. Trustee Rogan and Mayor Pro Tem Browning spent oodles of time this past year, 2021, getting things straightened out, getting things leveled, working with Zach and his people to get something that was neat, fair, easy, and clean. And it seemed to work out, put a lot of work into it, but still, if we go ahead and raise it, of course, along with what Mayor Pro Tem Browning had just said, we don't know what we're raising it to for how many rooms. So it's kind of hard to do our due diligence as a board and as we are required by law to do for the townspeople of getting a good estimate in numbers. And if we way overestimate, way over collect, well, we got to send money back. It just becomes a mess. And I would like to see us. I really like what the Mayor Pro Tem has just brought forward. That he just brought it forward, so I don't have much time to run through the cobwebs in my head. But if we can help Planet Bluegrass a little bit and get that calculation and also insulate them from, if the board changes over every 2, 3, 4 years and more increases go through, it insulates them from that. And if it gets passed at a wonky time that they are just getting ready to put out ticket sales at the end of the year, and they got additional taxes to worry about, or they're going to have to take it off the top out of their profits. What the mayor's proposed, or excuse me, their Mayor Pro Tem has proposed, I would like to see that hammered out and look at that in greater detail. It looks like we could insulate them from that. We still receive a little extra for all the town administration stuff that goes on with working with Planet Bluegrass for all their festivals, all the staff that helps out, then working on the UEB as long as I have, seeing the loads that hit our wastewater treatment plant during those heavy weeks and those weekends. So having a small amount still paid just as a percentage fee as part of the ticket price, and like I said, I don't know what that percentage would be. We'd have to work with them on that. But that's where I'd like to see it go, and that's going to take time. I'd rather see this work this out through the spring and fall, or spring and early summer, and have it ready to go way early for the November ballot, and get everything in line, worked out. And hopefully Planet Bluegrass will see the benefits to this also for their benefit and work with us at the same time. We're figured out, and we should know how many rooms we're going to have at least for the next couple of years, and then allow the new board come August, September, October to massage their 2023 budget with some pretty good, some pretty hard, pretty close numbers. And I think that would be better for them also.
Counselor, do you have anything to add?
I have nothing to add to this discussion other than the fact that the two-tiered question that we've been talking about, I believe, is possible for a variety of reasons. And it's up to the board to set what it would like to see as the policy.
I think Trustee Miller, go ahead.
Well, I'm just wondering if I'm just wondering about the November ballot and whether or not, because we are just we can't make a future board do anything, right? So, and I know things tend to get kind of shoved under the rug, so to speak. So I just wonder if we could potentially get part of that on the April ballot. Maybe not necessarily the increase part, but take the camping part off. Ask if, the people would, I don't know. I'm just throwing something out there, and go ahead.
If the question is, can the board just take off the camping part of the lodging tax? It could. In fact, it doesn't even require an election to do that. Any tax decrease doesn't require a Tabor election. Only a tax policy change or increase, a tax policy change that increases taxes, that is, requires a Tabor election. So.
Thank you, Counselor. I don't think that when we look at these numbers and they go from 16,000 that that we accrue currently to the possibility of 142,000 possibility that I don't think, knowing the quality of people that will be running for the future board, that this issue is going to be swept under the rug. I think this is an incredibly important capability to generate substantial funds. So I think that the Mayor Pro Tem laid out a very good strategy in regard to analyzing this much more thoroughly, and maybe be ready in time for the November ballot. I don't know about that even, but that's not the point. The point is really that we just have got to change that $2 lodging tax, because that's not in the town's best interest. It really isn't. And we have an opportunity to take advantage of projects that will be completed shortly. So I don't mind being patient about this and not having it be on the April ballot. I just wanted to bring it up as much as a discussion item as anything else. So that's my position. Trustee Miller, or Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on one thing that Trustee Caravas raised and just get this into the record, partly in case future boards are looking at this. With regard to why the very low $2 amount was set, when Trustee Rogan and I were working on the Planet Bluegrass compromise that was ultimately done last year, we went back and looked at the minutes of, because that involved lodging tax too. We went back and looked at the minutes of the board that proposed the lodging tax and why it got set at $2, which struck us as very low. And it was real clear what happened. Actually, the proposal from the staff that was in the initial draft of the ballot language was $3, which they had taken as kind of an average of whatever other towns they looked at. I think they were mostly small towns, not Denver or Boulder. It got to the meeting and there was discussion by the board that $3 a night is a lot to put on a campsite. And so because of the concern about overtaxing campsites, they cut it to $2. And so you had really and at that time, remember, there essentially weren't any hotels in Lyons except the Aspen Leaf, and basically there weren't any. And so it didn't have that big an effect on revenues. So they cut it from $3 to $2. And so basically the level of potential tax for a hotel got dragged down to the level of camping. It's kind of ironic that in discussing now, it would make more sense for a $5 or $7 or $10 tax for hotels, that you might have the opposite effect of dragging the per night charge for campsites way up above probably what it makes sense to, because it's coupled to the higher hotel tax. You'd be doing the opposite that the board did back several years ago. So that suggests to me that it's time to focus on basically decoupling the camping tax from the hotel tax. And it's going to take some time, and it seems like there's a kind of a consensus on that, but I think we can tackle that, and I think it can be done in fairly short order. And I think Trustee Rogan and I and Administrator Simonson, ultimately the negotiations got rocky at times, but Planet Bluegrass, especially through Mr. Tucker, were ultimately reasonable on what they agreed on. We came to a compromise on some very difficult issues, and I think that could be done again. And we should at least try it before we just impose the higher taxes, is my point.
On camping, Mayor Pro Tem.
On camping. Because
Okay.
I don't think we should just eliminate the camping tax and go no tax on camping, because we'd be depriving ourselves of revenue. But I think there's a middle of the road position along the lines I discussed that would make sense.
Trustee Rogan.
I agree 100%.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Caravas, sir.
I would like to also, and I don't think this is hamstringing a future board, I'd like to see us, this board go ahead and start the process. It's no different than when I first came on the board, the process for a PUD with Riverbend was already in process. And, you know, you get seated on the board and says, here's a packet, start learning stuff because you're 3 weeks, 4 weeks behind, go for it. So I don't see why we can't go ahead and start the process, start meeting with Mr. Tucker and Planet Bluegrass. And I would nominate Mayor Pro Tem Brown and Trustee Rogan, since they already worked with them so closely with Victoria, to continue the negotiations with them. So I would like to see us go ahead and start it as soon as we figure out what's going on here in the next month or so, because I think the PCDC meets on the big permit and then it'll come to us. And I think within 2 months, we'll know we'll have a closer idea. And I don't see why we can't go ahead and start the process and get it rolling.
Okay, Trustee Miller. I don't think I asked you yet.
I concur with, the rest of my board.
Okay, we'll do a lot more research on this and come back, hopefully, with the ballot issue at a later date. I interpret that as the direction of the board. Is that correct? Okay. All right. I don't believe we do have a summary of action items. Administrator Simonson?
The only action item I have is to potentially start the process of negotiating removal of the camping fee. Well, not even negotiating that discussions of the board about removing the camp. The other items, I don't believe there's any action items at this point. Dolores, do you have any?
Counselor?
No.
Just schedule all the public meetings required for the Planet Bluegrass review of the requested changes, because there's quite a bit of them required.
Do any board members have any suggestions of action items? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I don't imagine there's much discussion, is there? I'll call for the vote, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
and Trustee Miller.
Yay.
This meeting is adjourned. Stay healthy, everybody.
You too. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.